Drola Penchir Sange Drupha Shog Sange Chadang Soke Chognamla Jancho Baru Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chanyan Gipa Sonam Ki Drola Penchir Sange Drupha Shog Sange Chadang Soke Chognamla Jancho Baru Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chanyan Gipa Sonam Ki Drola Penchir Sange Drupha Shog. Okay. Okay. So you people, come on. Last time you did a question. Eileen gave me a question. It was very good. So give me a question, somebody. Start me off. Press the button and start me going. You got one. Okay, come on. What's your question?
What does one do with if you have terror?
Terror.
When you feel things falling away.
Okay, you mean panic attack when things go wrong?
No.
Oh.
When you're getting closer to some of the states that meditation moves you toward.
Oh gosh, that's a big one. I don't know. You have to ask that a different way. Start again. Ask it, please. What are you saying?
When you start reaching something closer.
When you're starting to
reach something.
Reach something.
That people might call non-dual experience, or
I don't know anything about that.
Me neither.
Well, then why are you asking? Why are you asking about it? I mean, that's way to go. That's a long way to go. That's like saying, tell me about the experience of, playing Bach perfectly. We're talking about the mechanics of how to get to play Bach perfectly. That's what I'm not so much talking about the experience of what it's like to play Bach. You got to learn to know how to play Bach, learn the theories. Then you'll play Bach eventually, and it'll come.
And then if you experience terror along the way.
You mean, so are you talking personally or something someone's talked? So you mean you had a meditation and you had a bit of fear in it?
Each time.
Okay, what do you mean by each time?
Each time I meditate, I feel.
Meditate, and what was your meditation? What kind of meditation is it?
Non-dual practices.
What?
Or outdoors that are.
What, darling? What?
Chine and Latam, mostly.
Okay. Could you be more precise? That's a very big statement. What kind of meditation do you do? And you say that every time you do it, you get fear. So what kind of meditation are you describing?
Pretty much all of them.
No, you have to. I don't understand, because all of them means all the topics of the Buddhist teachings, and there's thousands of meditations. So can you really be more precise, please?
Yeah, the one just remaining uninvolved in experience, maintaining the presence of awareness while.
Maintaining what?
The presence of awareness while.
I don't know those words. You mean watching your mind? You mean watching your breath? What doing nothingness? I've never heard of that meditation. I don't know that. I don't know that meditation at all, so I can't answer you. So what you're saying is you sit down with your eyes closed and then you have some fear. Is that what you're saying?
Usually slightly open.
What, darling?
Slightly.
So you do something, I don't know what you're doing in your mind. It doesn't even sound Buddhist to me, but never mind, maybe it is. And you say you have fear. You say you have fear.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? What happens? Your heart beats? What happens?
Heart beats. And I start trying to do things.
No, what do you mean by do things?
Do a practice other than.
Like what kind of practice, sweetheart?
Introspect, for example, or just anything to not be non-dual.
Darling, I don't know where you got all your teachings from, but I don't understand most of the words you're telling me. I'm not trying to be rude. Where'd you learn all these techniques from? Where'd you get them from? Who's your teacher?
Yeah, well, Dan Brown was.
What, darling?
Dan Brown, until recently.
Dan Brown. I don't know Dan Brown. Never mind. That's okay. So why do you assume that having fear is a sign of having understanding of non-duality? Why do you assume that? I mean, people have a fear crossing the road. They're not realizing non-duality. So why are you assuming that?
I just know that my practice causes me fear. I don't know.
But why are you assuming it's a good sign?
Oh, I don't
You just said it's a sign of non-duality. You said that. On the way to realizing non-duality, you said that.
Sure. When I do meditation techniques that are in the family, that have been taught in non-dual meditation, being very far away when you practice them, I feel fear.
Okay, I don't know. I can't help you. I don't know. No idea. You have to. I mean, you obviously you get teachings from a different tradition. I cannot answer you. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know the techniques you're talking about. And if you have fear, I don't know. I can't help you. I'm really, really, really sorry. I have no advice. Except know what you're doing and have good teachings. And I mean, why are you sitting there watching, doing whatever you're doing? Why are you doing all this? Why are you meditating? What's the point? What's your reason to do it? If I were asking you, why do you play tennis? You'd know the answer. So why are you meditating? What's the reason?
I do it for the same reason that I dance.
I'm sorry, what, darling? You do it for the same reason as what?
To the experience of sitting is powerful. I don't know what my.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. So you're not identifying with Buddhists and listening to Buddhist teachings because you want to understand your mind, you want to stop suffering, you want to help lessen your delusions and grow your virtues and be useful to others. I beg your pardon?
Less my delusions.
Pardon?
Less my delusions.
You want to lessen your delusions. So what are your delusions? What are delusions from the Buddha's point of view? What are they? These things you're trying to lessen. What are they called? Do you know your mind at all? Buddha's view of the mind? Have you studied the Buddhist view of the mind? Tell me some of the delusions. Tell me some of the parts of your mind you want to get rid of, and tell me some of the parts of your mind you wanted to cultivate, because that's the bottom line.
I guess currently I don't want to get rid of anything.
You don't want to get rid of anything?
No, I would just see what it is.
So you just said you do want to get rid of delusions. So now you say you don't want to get rid of delusions.
Perhaps delusions, but these things, I think I regard them in a deluded way, but the things that I'm regarding, I don't think are deluded necessarily. So
you're not a Buddhist, basically. Not that I've heard. You're a Buddhism that I've never heard of. So maybe you just be quiet and I'll say a few words and you see if you like it, and then we can go from there. Can you do that?
I feel a little bad.
I can't help you at all. I'm so sorry. Okay. Anybody else have a question that I can't help with? Anybody here have a question? Eileen, come on, you always got something. Eileen.
Here we go. Can you hear me? Okay. Causes and conditions. I understand that causes are always karmic, but I assume that conditions are also. I mean, do they always go together?
Darling, it's just a word. It's just words.
All right.
And it's like, you want to grow a flower. There are various causes and conditions you need to bring together. I mean, it's hardly rocket science.
Yes.
It just means for you to make a cake, you need to put together various causes and conditions. You need flour, eggs, to grow grow gardens, you need earth, water, soil, seeds. To work on your mind, you need to have a moment of suffering. There'll be various causes of it. To have a moment of happiness, there will be various causes and conditions that have to come together to produce it. It's nothing complicated, Eileen.
Just that when I see things in the world, I mean, somebody's walking down the street and something happens, it obviously there's a cause why that happened karmically on one level, but then there were conditions that made that possible.
So what's the question, darling? Give me a simple scenario. What's the question then? What's the meaning of the question?
Well, I'm trying to understand whether I understand causes. That makes a lot of sense to me, but the conditions obviously are karmic as well. In other words,
Eileen, the law of karma is the law that runs the universe. Everything is. It's like looking in a garden and wondering what's there that produced the result. And that's just called the law of botany. Here we're talking the law of karma, which is the law that Buddha describes, which is the law that we need to learn so that we can learn to stop suffering and get happiness.
Yes.
And conditions is just another word for causes. That's all. I think you're making it more than it is.
All right, understand. Thank you.
Interesting night. Any more questions? I can't answer. Yeah, go on. What, darling?
There's a question in the chat.
Good. What is it?
About the bardo in between.
Oh my God, this is an interesting night. What do you mean? Someone wants to know about it. Someone wants to know about it.
I'll read you the question.
Okay.
Can we talk about bardo, the in between death and reincarnation? Jocelyn asked that question.
Well, all that is a description. We need to understand that and to discuss what's your name?
Tyler.
Who?
Tyler.
Tyler. And Eileen's question, all of it comes down to understanding what Buddha means by the mind. So let's just do a refresher on what the mind is. Because this is the Buddha's expertise, that there are trillions and trillions of sentient beings, or the term in Tibetan is mind possessor. So like a very nice Semchen. trillions of mind possessors. And the law, the natural law, we understand that term in the modern world, natural law, botany is a natural law, gravity is a natural law, maths a natural law, all the things we call science. The natural law that runs these minds, the law within which these minds run, if you like. And it's a natural law, not made up by somebody, not created, there's no such thing like that. Is known as the law of karma, a law of cause and effect. So botany is a law of cause and effect too. So botany is learning to know how to grow things and why things are there. Well, the law of karma is learning to know how to identify what is suffering and what is happiness. One way of framing all of Buddhism is in terms of happiness and suffering. If you think of your life, it's very practical. You think of your life, every second we are driven to want to find the way to get happy feelings and to avoid suffering ones. It's a very simple way of putting it. I mean, deceptively simple. And all that's about the mind. The Buddha was, I mean, whereas we think, you know, the causes and conditions that produce happiness are a handsome boyfriend and a nice cake. Well, for the Buddha, yeah, that's, you know, that's the catalyst of something that goes on in the mind. The mind is the main thing. The mind is the main thing. So what is this mind that Buddha talks about? Because it's central to the whole Buddhist teachings. I mean, Tyler says he doesn't want to get rid of anything. Well, Buddha, if you're Buddhist, he'd suggest that you would want to. You want to stop suffering and you want to stop its causes. This is what Buddha's about. One way of framing all the Buddhist teachings. And where suffering and its causes occur in the mind. So what is the mind, if that's the case? If it's his expertise, mind is our capacity for cognition. It's not physical. It's not the brain. Depends upon the brain, depends upon, as a condition, if you like, of having a mental experience is a brain, but it's not the mind itself. It doesn't come from a creator, doesn't come from mother and father. Is a beginningless continuity of mental moments that is the product of this law of cause and effect. It comes from before this life or comes into this life programmed with whatever we put into that mind. And whatever we do in this life, in this mind, programs the mind. So when this mind leaves this body, it will take another life. I mean, the concept is pretty simple, but this is the fundamental point in the Buddhist view. So we are in charge, and the materialist view is we think we're made by mummy and daddy. We're this kind of mystery. We didn't ask to get born. It's not my fault, and someone makes us and plonks us on this planet. And happiness and suffering come from out there. We're never sure how and where. No wonder we live in terror. The Buddha's view is, yeah, sure, the outside world plays a role, but the key player, the main player in our lives is our own mind, our thoughts and feelings and emotions. So Buddha describes all of those in terms of positive ones and negative ones, speaking very simply. We don't speak this way in modern psychology. So the ones that are the neurotic ones, the I-based ones, the fear-based ones, the delusional ones, the ones that cause fear, that are in their nature fear-ridden, fear-driven, because they're misconceptions. The Buddha says they're not at the core of our being. They're the source of our suffering, the source of why we make others unhappy, source of future suffering lives, future suffering experiences. So our job is what Buddha's done, our job is to identify those states of mind that are misconceptions, delusional, afflictions, and learn to rid the mind of them. This is what nirvana means, liberation from suffering. All this goes on in the mind. And so happiness is the same. Happiness is putting all the causes and conditions together, starting with the mind, that produce happiness, happy experiences. We all want happiness and don't want suffering. And of course, in Buddhist view, there are different levels of it. So as we know, we come into this birth, into this life, and there's very detailed descriptions of this, especially in the Vajrayana system, very detailed descriptions of exactly how we get born, and then indeed detailed descriptions of how we die. So from this perspective, it's described, you know, the death process is described in great detail. And when the mind does leave the body, which is usually about 3 days after you stop breathing, because the subtle mind is still there. We don't posit that in the modern world. Then eventually the mind leaves the body, containing all the karmic, the seeds of all of the actions, because everything we think and do and say leaves imprints in our mind. It's just the way it is. This natural law of karma. Whatever we think and do and say stays in the mind, programs our mind, sows seeds in the mind. And then when the mind leaves the body after death, it can take rebirth pretty much immediately, but goes through this kind of stage they call intermediate state, like a dream state, really, but out of the body. And then when the time comes, in our case, in this particular life, when our mother and father hopped into bed or whatever, and the egg and sperm came together, that was the condition that enabled our consciousness to go there and then become this new person. So the bardo is like a dream state, basically. Experience is really very much like a dream. It's a subtle level of mind. It's similar to a dream state, experientially. It's your subtle mind, not the grosser conceptual level, not the sensory level that we experience day to day. And that's really essentially the point. That's really all it is. It's like a dream. It's like a dream, the experience of a dream. It's a subtle level of mind, kind of weird, random experiences as we know our dreams are. And when the time comes for the mother and father, let's say if you're going to be born a human, to come together, then you leave that state and you're reborn in that human body, you know. So that's about what I want to say about the bardo, darling. Jocelyn, I hope that's helpful. So I think Buddhists, you know, I don't know what Tyler's been learning with respect. I don't know, and that's fine. I'm sure he's got good teachers, but I don't know what to say. But you know, the Buddhism is about the mind, basically. So then he talks about meditation. So meditate is simply a term we can use to refer to certain formal practices, formal methods for learning to harness the mind, and then eventually to have control over the mind, so that we can rid the mind of the neuroses, the ego grasping, that's the source of all the fears, and then the attachment, when that ego grasping, what the main voice of that ego grasping is called attachment, this emotional hunger, this neurotic emotional neediness to get only the nice things, and then which gives rise to aversion or anger when it doesn't get what it wants, and all the other neurotic states of mind. The Buddha would say that these are adventitious, these are not at the core of our being. These are the source of our suffering, and the source of why we do things to harm others. So the Buddha has found from his own experience that these are not at the core of our being. This is the key point in Buddhism. This is the key point. That this is a shocking concept, actually. In the West, this is like a shocking concept. It's like laughable. You're suggesting I can rid my mind utterly of all anger or attachment or jealousy or fears? Yes, Buddha says. That's what he's simply telling us what he's done. He's telling us the job that he has done. You know, like if you go to a mathematician, he'll tell you what he's learned. If you go to a tennis player, she'll tell you what she's learned. You know, you're learning from someone who's embodied that knowledge. Well, Buddha's this person who's done this job, he would say, of identifying, utilizing concentration meditation, shamatha, utilizing that technique which he got from the Indians before him. These genius Indians invented it more than 3,000 years ago. This technique that enables us to access the sattva, to harness our mind. We can see right now that our mind is completely berserk, out of control. And we don't pay attention to it until it's raging with emotion. Then it's a bit late. So Buddha gives us this skill, this brilliant skill, psychological skill, that enables us to completely harness, to subdue first the grosser level, the sensory consciousness, and the conceptual level, which is the level we function at. And when you've calmed those parts of your mind down, and you've accessed this subtler level of mind that we don't even posit as existing in the modern world, modern psychology or neuroscience, then you're really capable of doing this job of unpacking and unraveling all the nonsense, the misconceptions, which are the source of your suffering. And because they're rooted in being misconceptions, which is a very odd concept to us, that anger is a misconception, fear is a misconception. They're real experiences, but they're rooted in being conceptual stories that have no basis in reality. And that takes time to see. And therefore we can rid the mind of them because they're not at the core of our being. This is what the fundamental point in Buddhism, the fundamental point that Buddha is making. That's his essential point. In other words, and this is what the word nirvana means. It's not some place like heaven. Nirvana is a word that refers to the cessation, having done the job that he says he's done, and you take on board that job, the methodology, having accomplished that, you've rid the mind of this ego grasping, the root delusion, the root neurosis, and you therefore rid the mind of attachment and aversion, all the other nonsense, because they're all rooted in that ego grasping. You've rid the mind utterly of those. So what's left is your virtue and your goodness and your wisdom. And the bonus is also what's left is bliss. Happiness, quite literally, is the natural state of our mind, to the degree it's unencumbered by the neuroses. This is the Buddha's view. So, essentially being a Buddhist is like Lama Yeshe puts it, being your own therapist, learning to know your mind to a level of subtlety and sophistication that really we don't have with respect to us in our modern views of the mind. So, why a person will be engaging in Buddhist techniques is so that because you want to suffer less and be more fulfilled and content, speaking very simply. But then, of course, on the basis of this, you see that everybody's in the same boat. So then you develop compassion and you want to help others. A bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So is any of that familiar to you, Tyler? Have you heard any of those words before?
Yeah, I think I was using different terminology.
You certainly were. But you didn't say anything that I'm saying, not a word. You didn't say that. All you basically said about meditation, and you have terror, and it's getting to non-duality, and I do shine, and I do the other one. That's what you said, essentially. You didn't say what I said at all. Did you notice?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Tyler. So maybe we're on the same track after all. Yeah? Okay. Keep working.
Robina, I've got a question that's related to what you just spoken about, I think.
Yes.
Okay. Now, it is the case that we all have Buddha nature. Every sentient being.
I can't see who's talking to me. I can't see who's talking.
Oh, it's Jay from South Australia.
Where are you, darling? I can't.
A mandala up there.
I want to see your picture. I can't see you.
I don't have a real thing.
Oh,
It's
never
just-
mind. Don't you worry, Jay. You talk to me anyway. I'm listening. Talk to me,
Yeah.
sweetheart.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Go.
So we've all got Buddha nature. Every sentient being has Buddha nature. So I find that I can use this for myself, but it's hard to explain to other people, obviously, who don't have the same thoughts. I feel quite optimistic about the future of humanity. It's like, which right now is not a very popular position to take. There's war, plague, dystopian media like crazy. But it's like, I feel like we all have Buddha nature. We're all headed in a positive direction. It's like,
okay, so
am I off with the fairies?
we're all got Buddha nature, great. All headed in the same right direction, wrong. I disagree with that. But let's just stop there. Buddha nature.
Okay.
Then finish your point, and then we can discuss it. Why do you? Okay, my question to you: Why? Let's say we've all got potential to play music. Let's say we have that. Then you're optimistic because we're all headed towards being better musicians. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
not true, but it's not true.
Yeah. Well,
But it's not
okay.
true.
So do you think that we will not?
No, that's not the
ever-
discussion. No, that's not the discussion. The fact that we've all got Buddha. Okay, what does Buddha nature mean first? It means simply that your mind, that what I just said before, that the delusions, which are the cause of suffering, the Buddha's observation is that they are not intrinsic to us. They don't define us. They are not at the core of our being. And in other words, I like to use the simple analogy of a glass of water, that water in its nature, we know it's H2O, 2 bits of H and 1 bit of O. Water is not H2O P49. Pollution 49. We know pollution is there, but we know it's not intrinsic to the water. And as long as water exists, as long as you can identify that pollution, you can remove the pollution. That's the concept. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay. So the Buddha's view is all minds necessarily have the potential to be rid of delusions.
Yes.
That's the nature of mind. But just because a person's mind has that potential, it does not mean that they're doing the job to get rid of the pollution. It doesn't mean that. I think that's a misconception. Yes, as long as they say what encourages bodhisattvas to never give up life after life after life, helping sentient beings, is the fact that our minds are have this potential to be clear and pure. That gives them the courage to never give up because it's possible. But I think if you look at the evidence, it is absolutely not true that people are moving towards lessening delusions and growing goodness. I mean, look at the world.
I do. Trust me.
So what should give you courage then, like the bodhisattvas, is the fact that it's our potential. That's the potential. And that's why you should have courage to never give up. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Good.
But I still go back to, so is it the case? All the sentient beings have Buddha natures, but they can choose to not actualize that Buddha nature, so to speak. They make other choices.
That's too simplistic. I think
Okay.
it's meaning, I mean, you know, this whole word choice kind of is very curious. And this is bringing up the business Eileen's talking about conditions. If you meet a person who's got, even just simply, if you meet a person, let's say, who's got lots of anger, ordinary person who's got lots of anger, very deep habit with anger, really, you know, buys into their anger, thinks it's a good thing. And then if you were to say to that person right now, in the midst of their massive anger, you can give up anger anytime you like, which is theoretically true. It's theoretically true, but they will laugh at you because the anger is so intense. They can't possibly see the possibility that they would to want to give it up. It's a bit naive to say you can choose, you know, because if it's, again, it's like, if everything is moving in the direction of, you know, being angry, everything, your habit, your tendencies, all your conditions, your life, meeting the people who are making you angry, the conditions are so strong, like driven in that direction. Theoretically, absolutely, you can never say that person doesn't have the potential to stop being angry. They do have. But the anger is so intense, the habits are so strong, they're so locked into it, you might as well say they don't have a choice at that moment. You understand my point?
I do. Yeah.
So if you've got a person, you know, I mean, for example, the Buddha would say that an animal is a sentient being as well. If you're born as a lion, it's a really good example. If you're born as a lion, by definition, a lion is a mind who, due to past very heavy aggression and tendency to kill, literally when they die and they leave the bardo, they run like a magnet to a very appropriate rebirth, a mummy lion, and get a very big, powerful body with big claws and a mind suited to that body. So you tell the lion every day the buffalo doesn't like having her guts ripped out for breakfast. It is literally impossible in that particular time as a lion. She simply is not equipped to ever possibly access her capacity to stop killing. Impossible in those conditions. Do you understand? So she still possesses Buddha nature, but not the conditions to possess, not the conditions that
So my question is, and I know the concept of time may be irrelevant, but given enough time, won't everyone actualize their Buddha nature? They will become bodhisattvas. Enough time. I mean, we are talking many, many eons.
Right. So theoretically, in actuality, every mind by definition possesses the potential to be free of delusions. That's one thing. So,
okay, good.
So you could argue because of that, it's possible at some point everybody will be free of delusion. You could say that, but I would suggest you don't hold your breath, Jay. If you look at reality. No, look at, I mean, also, why are you wanting, I mean, look at reality. Look at what you're seeing in front of you.
Oh, darling, I do. Trust me. I'm very much a pragmatist.
Well, then what's the point? What's the point you're trying to make then? What's your main point?
That this is not all there is. Okay. Oh, all right.
Sorry.
That the life that I am leading now, that I am seeing in front of me, that certainly in all of human history that I've studied, and I do study history, yes, it reflects war, suffering, etc. Yes, definitely. But I also think that this is not all there is, because certainly, do we not exist ad infinitum? And I know that me saying we, what is the we? We can talk about that. That'll be complex. But it's an ongoingness. Time is meaningless, ultimately.
What's the point you're making? Sorry, I agree with your point. What's your point? What's the point? What's the point here? What's the point?
My point is that I believe it makes logically, it makes sense to me that eventually, and whatever that means, eventually every sentient being will.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great. I can agree. What's the experiential implication of this for you right now? Because if it doesn't,
it makes me suffer less. I suffer less than other people.
Then it's hardly useful. That's hardly useful. Perhaps better to say, good, I will never give up becoming a Buddha so that I can help all these sentient beings achieve it.
And I come from that point of view. And it motivates me.
But you didn't say it.
I have a hard time meditating.
Sweetie, you didn't say it. Are we communicating?
It does motivate me. It is true.
That's all that matters. Then it's useful.
Yeah.
Okay, darling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night, God.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay. Very kind. Come
Hi,
on.
Robina.
Who's
Jimmy
that?
Kelleher. My teacher's the Lama Sam 10 in Philadelphia.
Oh, good.
I'm a recovering alcoholic.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Now,
What?
I'm not shaking Buddhism. I love it. I love being able to battle with things in my mind and knock them out of the way and get rid of the garbage, okay? But I've got to turn my life and my will over to a God every day to keep from going out and getting banged up. You see what I'm saying? So my question to you is a self-will question. Now, the real question here is, it's a question, I can't give anything to Buddha. Which is it? I just got to work it out in my mind in the Buddhist philosophy. Please.
What's the question?
The question is, can I turn my self-will over? Is there a practice of turning my
You mean you're talking like an AA, you mean up to a higher power, you mean like that?
Very much so, yes.
Okay, darling, I understand. Thank you, Jimmy. Well, in the Buddhist perspective, because they don't talk about a creator, maybe the way you could say those words, if you want to use those words, is to surrender to your own higher power, to your own, because it's your potential. The Buddha's idea is, okay, I know, not even that. I mean, the Buddha's teachings are many, the Buddha, okay, what's the word Buddha? Buddha is a word used to refer to a person who's done the job of ridding their mind of rubbish and has grown their compassion to perfection. And that's the name of a person called Buddha. So you could easily look to that person and revere that person and surrender to that person. Nothing wrong with that, but you do the work. You've got to do the work. You know that. So you can use Buddha for that reason. But we tend to think in AA that you've got to have a creator concept. Not at all. Not at all, darling. I mean, anybody can be your mentor. Buddha's a mentor, basically. You can have yourself, you have sponsors. You look to this person who's there holding your hand, encouraging you because they've done the work. Well, Buddha is like your best sponsor, put it like that. And you can turn yourself over to Buddha, why not? And then you do it, but you got to do the work. They don't do the work, you got to do it, babe. That's good enough, isn't it? You're doing well, I imagine.
Perfect. I got all my teeth. I got a button-up shirt on. All the people in my life talk to me.
I'm so happy.
All fully employed.
Good, Jimmy. Well done. You're doing beautifully. Keep moving, babe. Thank you so much. What a night. Who else? Come on, people. Questions? Who else? Where? Hello.
Previous person online, they were talking about Buddha nature came up. And it's at the core of our nature. Right?
Yes.
But I can't get away from the idea, it sounds so negative, but also that suffering is at the core of our nature also.
Suffering.
Yes.
Okay. So it's really here. We have to, if we're going to say, okay, we've got to use, no, I understand.
I heard it too, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Don't.
But is it something that can be answered? Like even the Buddha, I've been told that
Yeah.
no one can answer why suffering. Why
Oh,
suffering?
of course, the Buddhist.
But isn't it also primordial? Isn't it also,
I understand. Buddhist teachings.
there just within?
No.
I mean, it's a good thing to I think we're all making good effort to rid ourselves of it. I think that's beneficial and should be done. Like can't get this escape, but it's also
All I can do is, I know, but that's not Buddhist, but that's not what Buddha's saying. It's you're saying that, and it would be, and I hear your point, but all Buddha's saying is that he has found a method to identify in the mind the causes of suffering, which are the delusions, and he has found a method to rid the mind of those. That's what nirvana means. That's the whole point about the whole Buddhism is. It's very simple. That's it. You might have to accept a single word of it. You have to believe a single word. You think it's a load of rubbish. I don't care. I'm just telling you that's what he says. That's the entire point in Buddhism, that he has found the causes of suffering are in the mind, and that he has found the method to rid the mind of those causes. I mean, these Indians before him were geniuses. As the Dalai Lama said, it was his genius Indians more than 3,000 years ago. And this is the system he came out of. They began the investigation to the nature of self. That's where these incredible meditation techniques came from that enable us to dig deep into the mind to degrees of subtlety, like I just said, that we don't possess in our culture. And finally, Buddha, when he diverged in his own direction, it was specifically in relation to the nature of self and the nature of mind that he has found that ego grasping, this primordial sense of a separate self, which gives rise to intense attachment to get what the self wants, which gives rise to aversion and panic and fear and the dramas and aggression and all the rest of the stuff that we're very familiar with, which seems to be at the core of our being. He would suggest that it's not at the core of our being. Those words have great meaning for the Buddha. They're not intrinsic to us, they're adventitious. And all the practice of being a Buddhist and the logic of Buddhist philosophy and the logic of all the practice is to discover that and do that job. That's the point. So if you want to understand what he means by that, you've got to study it and see what he's saying and not just believe it blindly, but there's logic to that according to his system. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you.
But you're absolutely right. If you look at the world, it is in the nature of suffering. Of course it is.
Right.
But all he is saying is, it's not intrinsic. That's all he's saying is that you can find the causes and then you can get rid of the causes. That's exactly what Buddhism is. You understand?
Yes.
So if we're interested in that, we need to pursue it and find out what he means by that. Not just blindly believe it and swallow it whole, but look into the logic of it. It's all there. Do you understand?
Yes.
That's it. So it's up to you, honey. That gives you some courage then, maybe. I don't know.
It does.
Yes, good. Okay. No, I mean, yeah, that's it, isn't it? But it's shocking in the West. I remember one woman at a class, she burst into laughter when she said, "What do you mean you can get rid of anger and jealousy? You'd be mentally ill if you got rid of them." Because this is the thing, I think, and this is if we look at our world, and it's not criticizing, we're just looking at the different systems that exist. You know, the scientific world, the philosophical materialist view of the universe, which predominates in our world. I'm not criticizing. It's a given that anger, jealousy, depression, ego are a valid part of a normal person. We give equal status to what Buddha would refer to as the neurotic states of mind, which he has found them to be adventitious and which can be rid of. But our view is we give them equal status along with compassion and wisdom and intelligence as being all reasonable parts of a reasonable person. And that's a very deep assumption in our mind. And that suffering is just natural. And of course you can't get rid of it. That'd be ridiculous. That's how we think. So it's a different system, a different world, different view, isn't it? It's up to us to investigate, see what we think. Isn't it?
Yes.
Good. I mean, Buddha might be wrong. The point, I mean, as the Dalai Lama said, if you're following Buddha's methodology, you choose to, and you go, you know, like any methodology, if you decide you want to follow Einstein, what Einstein says, and you follow the steps that he followed, that he presented, how to discover E equals MC squared, you've got to go one step at a time, right? And you tick the boxes as you go. But at some point, you might discover he's actually wrong in his findings. Then he'd be the first one to be happy. Buddha's the same. So Dalai Lama says to us, especially us Westerners, if you follow Buddha's methodology, I mean, he just presents the system. Buddha's presenting basically the method he found that got this result. Don't believe him. Do it yourself. And he says, and Dalai Lama says, if you find at a certain point where it's mistaken what he suggests, then you must reject him. So it demands real engagement, and that's why in the Buddhist view, merely believing, which is how we think of religion, is just like intellectual laziness, absurdity.
That's the thing that I loved about the Dharma, that it was.
There you go.
It was.
Yeah.
Truth
Yeah.
over.
Yes.
Ego.
That's right.
God saying, follow me.
That's right.
But if there is something beyond that you found that's more
Exactly right.
truthful and
Yeah.
that
And the
we
point,
must-
that's right. And what I find interesting with this is that any body of knowledge, and we've got to talk here as Buddhism being a body of knowledge, which is again is a surprise because we just think of religion. Often we think of religion as just a random series of wacky, weird things and experiences in meditation that some seem to come from nowhere. We don't seem to think it's a coherent system. But the Buddha would suggest, I mean, the Buddhism does suggest, and certainly the way it's studied in the Tibetan monastic university system, it's a very clear system. So any body of knowledge, seems to me, whether it's called acupuncture, I don't care what you call it, if it's valid, it's got to be first coherent theoretically. Do you understand? So we're not at the experiential level yet. You can't prove music, you can't leap onto the piano and play Bach yet. You've got to learn the theory first. Once you learn the theory, it all makes sense. Then you have to practice it. It seems to me with acupuncture, with anything, you could learn the theories of acupuncture enough to teach even someone else, but they've got to be coherent. They would be coherent if it is a valid system. Meaning if music is valid as a system, you do it every time. It's not just random. But we think of religion as random. And I mean, if we have faith in a creator, and I'm not being rude, then God has a plan. And it's very rude to ask God to tell you his plan. It's his business. And your job is to have faith in him. That's not the view of Buddhism. Do you understand? It's up to us. But it's hard work to do the work, but just blindly believe. We're a bit intellectually lazy. We'd rather just believe, I think. Kind of go shopping and, well, I think I prefer Buddhism. I mean, it's easier to do that. But it's also a slow process. It's one step at a time, you know. And you prove each point as you go along. Has to be this way. What else is there? Math is like that. You can't leap into becoming a mathematician overnight, suddenly skipping all the steps. You can't. It's got to be coherent, incremental, you know. First intellectually, then experiential. I find that helpful.
Does that mean wisdom comes before compassion?
Say it again.
You talked about the two wings of the bird and just what you're saying.
It comes wisdom, not necessarily. Many people have more of a tendency towards compassion and even bodhicitta, and can get that first before you realize emptiness. But you can lose bodhicitta. You can't lose the realization of emptiness. You can't lose the wisdom. Once you've got the realization of emptiness, you can lose bodhicitta up to a certain point, because you've still got there's still an assumption of an I there that has bodhicitta, you know.
Helping.
Huh?
The I that's helping versus. Anyway, so both wisdom and
Compassion. What?
No particular order.
Oh, no, absolutely. The path is laid out in a very clear order. Absolutely, it's laid out in a very clear order. So, in other words, if you look at this lam rim, this packaging of the teaching, the Tibetans are packaged. The very first level is really the beginnings of the wisdom practices, which is abiding by the laws of karma, understanding the logic of karma, you know, controlling your body, controlling your speech, controlling your mind, mainly to prevent you from future suffering. It's the beginning of the wisdom part. Then you get into the mind, and it's even more wisdom part. You learn to know the mind, how it functions, what it is, what's a delusion, what's a virtue. That's to do with clarity and wisdom, definitely that. And as you lessen your own delusions, you become wiser.
Right,
and therefore more content.
You flop over into bodhicitta from the analytical perspective.
Pardon?
From the analytical, in other words, the wisdom part is analytical. All the way.
Even though you get, no, okay. Let me finish this bit. This is a good point. You're working on your body, your speech, and your mind. You're lessening neuroses, lessening harming. And as you do that, you become more content and you become more clear. Because delusions literally are misconceptions. So you're living in la land, you're living in ignorance. As you lessen delusions, you become more wise.
You start to see clearly.
That's what I'm saying. More clear and more content, but also more compassionate, because you're lessening the division between self and other. Because by definition, delusions are I-based. And so we ignore other. We can't see other and don't care unless they suit our needs. So as you're doing the beginnings of the wisdom wing, controlling your body, speech, and mind, you get more clear, more stable, more fulfilled, more content, more happy, and more wise, and more empathetic. Then you proactively practice the compassion wing, and you still use logic, though. You still use analytical meditation and logic to argue with ego's misconceptions that are the ones that cause us to have this division between self and other. And then you learn more and more and more, and then you get more and more wisdom, then you get more and more compassion, and eventually you get even bodhicitta first. And then you do the six perfections, and then you can realize emptiness. But some people, the brighter ones will realize emptiness first, and the others with more tendency towards compassion will realize bodhicitta first. Depends on the person.
So
but it's a very logical order.
There is no material cause that's specific to any individual.
No, there are specific causes for wisdom and specific causes for compassion, but taught according to your tendency. Right. Some people get compassion more easily and therefore have to work on the wisdom side. Some people have more wisdom side, have to work on the compassion side. Do you understand? Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So the Lama would be the text that lays it out in order.
The what?
Lama.
Yes, where it's all presented in the order. Yes, exactly. Okay.
And also, just curious, so the realization of emptiness is never lost, even from life.
Once you realize, okay, yeah, once you, okay. The Buddhist approach is that in our mind, we have neurotic states of mind, delusional states of mind, misconceptions, afflictions, painful emotions. The root of them, the most primordial one, the hardest to identify, literally is simply called ignorance, ma-ripa, or known colloquially as ego grasping. It's this primordial, so primordial, even when we hear about it, it just puzzles us because it's so primordial, it's so absolute for us. It's this primordial belief in an assumption of a concrete, real, separate, intrinsic, independent me. On the basis of that, we have attachment to get what that me wants. We have aversion when attachment doesn't get what it wants, and all the other neurotic states of mind branch out from there. It's a very clear presentation. So these states of mind have two functions. They're intensely emotionally painful. Check the last time you're anxious, panic attack, anger, jealous. It was not happy. Intensely painful, but they in their very being, and this takes time to see, they are misconceptions. They're conceptual states of mind that we've practiced hugely, which is why we have the emotional component, that are basically not rooted in reality, are misconceptions. And they have a function of over-exaggerating everything. So attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of the boyfriend, the deliciousness of a cake, and over exaggerates the power of that boyfriend to make me happy. So it brings clinging, manipulating, controlling, possessing. It's completely a demented state of mind. It's emotionally painful, but is a misconception. So as you go through the Lam Rim, you first control the servants of the mind. The very first level of practice, not even about your mind yet. The Buddha would exhort us to not kill, not steal, not lie, live a disciplined life, don't harm others. Why? Because that sows seeds in your mind that will produce your future suffering. So the very first level of practice is all about stopping your own suffering by not harming others. So you live a disciplined life, you live in vows, you purify your mind. Then you get to the next level of practice in the Lam Rim, and now you start to get into the mind itself. You become your own therapist. You learn to meditate. You learn to unpack and unravel and identify these misconceptions and distinguish between them and the virtues. That's the real job of being a Buddhist. So the consequences of all this so far, this is the wisdom wing, is you become, like I said, wiser, clearer, more stable, more fulfilled, and more empathetic. And then you go to the compassion wing, and you continue to work on your mind. That never stops. But now it's in reference to breaking down the barriers that ego has constructed between self and other. So the main emphasis in the first lot, the emphasis is to stop your own suffering. This lot is to stop you from harming others. So you continue to develop your wisdom as you're going, and you're growing now proactively more compassion, more empathy, how to help others. And then eventually, you can do this at any stage, but it's presented in the teachings towards the end of the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva. But you can bring these teachings in at any point. You would then learn to get single point of concentration, shamatha, so you can access this subtle level of your mind. And you're more capable of that now because you've done all the past work. And you now can start to uproot the root delusion. You can get to see how that is a misconception, the subtlest one of all. And you can only do that in subtle meditation. It's not possible to do that intellectually. You can talk about it. You can talk about it intellectually. You give it a very clear presentation of it theoretically. But the only way to cut it is at a subtler level of mind beyond conceptuality. And then eventually at some point in your meditation, after much of this work, step by step by step, you will see clearly for the first time there never has been, isn't, and never could be that kind of fantasy, separate, independent I that we have believed in since beginningless time. There'll be some point at which you have that first direct non-conceptual cognition of that fact. And that's the first moment of your realization of emptiness. And from that second, you've cut the root of suffering. You've got more work to do, but you can't fall back after that.
Where do you go from there?
Huh?
Where do you go from
You
there?
perfect it, and you add bodhicitta to the mix, and you become a Buddha. Okay. What, darling?
Could you define bodhicitta, please?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's funny. It's most of these words we can say them in English, but I find that word, I don't know, it's hard. It's in English. In English, it just means literally bodhi. It's connected to the word Buddha, and I've heard in some way you can refer to it as awakening. Like an awakening person. Sattva is person, or chitta is an attitude or mind. So awakening mind, who cares, So bodhicitta it's the culmination of a series of practices of developing love and compassion, and then this powerful, it's a culmination of a series of the practices on the compassion wing of cultivating the virtuous states of mind to the point of perfection. And so when you've got bodhicitta, finally, you've made this paradigm shift in the mind where there's no longer the thought of I. You haven't realized emptiness yet, but others are so totally powerful for you. You completely made this paradigm shift where others are the ones who are in the front of your mind. It's sort of like the world is your mother for every being on the planet. And you only think of others now, which sounds so bizarre. And that sounds like mental illness in our culture. When you only think of others, like you're mentally ill. Sorry, mate. But you've completely gone beyond. You haven't realized emptiness yet, maybe. But you've done all this work of hugely subduing your delusions, which are eye-based, and growing this incredible. I mean, when you read about these bodhisattvas, it's like they're hard to believe they're real. People have this insane compassion and empathy for other beings, and it's now, when you've got bodhicitta as a realization, it's not just random. You've really got it very stable. So there's no longer the thought of I, no longer the thought of doing anything for yourself. You could argue that a person who's got bodhicitta is an utterly fulfilled person because you don't need to worry about yourself anymore because you've done the job, You're okay, you're cool, and you can only think of others and the suffering of others. So, yeah, go on.
You can only have the bodhicitta once you've realized emptiness?
No, not at all. That can come first. It can come first. But you can't have this bodhicitta until you've done an incredible amount of work of lessening your own neuroses. You've got to do the first, lessen attachment and fears and I-based, unhappy, depressed, not fair, poor me, aggression, anger, jealousy, all the unhappy ones. They've got to be utterly subdued. There's no question. You can't possibly have those alongside bodhicitta. They've gone necessarily. Not utterly until you realize emptiness, but they've gone radically. And only what's there now after much work, many, many lifetimes, you've got incredible love for others, may they be happy, incredible compassion, may they not suffer, and this powerful sense of responsibility as if you're their mother to only work for others. Do you understand? It's like what you think of as a saint, I think. You hear about the saints. You understand?
Sure.
Something like that. So it's kind of intense. I mean, I find emptiness a lot easier to handle. Bodhicitta to me sounds like outrageous, Do you understand? I'd rather talk about emptiness anytime.
When you talk about a non-conceptual realization,
yes,
can you explain that to people who don't know?
Oh, okay.
Realization?
Non-conceptual. Well, to understand that meaning, we have to understand the way the mind works. Okay. So we have sensory consciousness and we have mental, for a start. And I've discussed this, but that's all very, very telling. Sensory, we make the body the boss, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says. So when we think of sensory experiences, it's most of our lives. I mean, we judge all our happiness and suffering in terms of how our senses feel. If you have a little pain in the knee, you're miserable. You see a pretty rainbow, you're happy, We're sort of sitting ducks for sensory experiences. So sensory, though, is very limited. I always use the same example. It's very powerful. I will say I see a very nice looking cup, but it's not true. Eye consciousness is profoundly limited, only see shape and color. So you've got to ask what part of the mind cognizes pretty cup. That's your mental consciousness. And that's all the work, that's where the workshop is, as Lama Zopa says. It's where all the thoughts and feelings and emotions and unconscious, all the memories, all the opinions, all the viewpoints, the huge, that's what we have to learn to become familiar with. The senses are really like dumb animals. We give them incredible power. But it's really sobering to realize that, we just see and hear things, but the rest of it is our story of how we define it all. But we think we hear an ugly noise. We think we see a handsome person, but handsome person and ugly noise are stories made up in our mental consciousness. And we believe those stories to be true. So we've got to investigate the mental consciousness. So now in the mental consciousness, it's got two ways of knowing, two ways of cognizing phenomena, conceptually, and then non-conceptual, which is called perception. That's a word we all have in English, but it's got a very specific definition in Buddhist psychology. And we don't posit such a level because it's a subtle level of mind, that you can only have direct perception, which is non-conceptual, in your subtle meditation. So it's not a level we have it all in neuroscience. So therefore, we live at the level of conceptual, but that's surprising to us because what we'd say in the world is that's conceptual and this is emotional. But for the Buddha, they are all conceptual. And there happen to be some that are emotionally. So, okay, let's analyze how anger is rooted in being a conception, how attachment is rooted in being a concept. It's hard to see, but when we do see this, we're on track with understanding Buddhist psychology. So, in the mind, in the mental consciousness, we could divide into neurotic ones, positive ones, and then the third lot, forget those. So the neurotic ones are like ego grasping, the root one, attachment, anger. We know those words, and we know they're emotional. The body's shaking, isn't it? That's when we know them very well. So when the body is involved is when we become familiar with them. We don't notice what's happening in our mind until our body's shaking. Do you understand? But it's too late. So with meditation, concentration meditation, you learn to steady the mind and focus on one thing, which means you learn to eventually, as you get better concentration, to calm down the berserk conceptuality, the thoughts never stopping, right? And so slowly, you start to see more clearly in your own mind. This is quite sophisticated. You start to hear at this more subtle level the conceptual story, which is attachment, not the emotion, but the thought. Attachment is basically a concept that exaggerates the deliciousness of the cake. That's what attachment is. Attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of the boyfriend or whatever it is that you're attached to. So we only know it when it's emotional and kind of exciting and delicious. And that's just that's the tip of the iceberg. But it's rooted in being a conceptual story. When you can hear conceptually how there's this emotional hunger that's feeling I'm not enough, that over exaggerates the divineness of the object and then clings to get it. That's the emotional component, because we practice believing in that conceptual story, the Buddha would say, for countless lifetimes. So when you unpack your mind and go more and more steady, more and more deep, more and more subtle, you can then begin to unpack these conceptual stories and argue with them before they get to the level of emotion. Do you understand? Yes. We only notice we've got them when the body's shaking, when we're screaming and shouting and having a panic attack, or having bliss and joy when the new boyfriend comes along.
So a non-conceptual realization.
So a non-conceptual is a much more subtle level where you've got the experience of it. I mean, there's an analogy for non-conceptual would be that the recipe is the conceptual and the taste is the direct perception. So when you have the theory about impermanence, but a direct experience of the truth of impermanence.
And then you pound that home. What do you do with
And
that?
then you just keep practicing and practicing until you realize emptiness. Then you can't lose them. Do you understand? So it's really quite a sophisticated presentation of the way the mind works. I'm not trying to be, I mean, I'm a Buddhist, so I like Buddha, obviously. But it's really fascinating. Because we think of emotions as physical, because we only know them at the physical level. You only know you're depressed when you can't go to bed one morning, because your body's inert. You only know you're angry when you're screaming and shouting. And we don't pay attention until then. That's our tragedy. That's why we have to learn to pay attention before they get to the emotional level. Then you can hear the stories and you can unpack the stories before they burst out the mouth. That's what being your own therapist means. Do you understand?
It's subtle, isn't it?
What?
It's very subtle.
It is, absolutely, but doable. Yes, sweetheart, behind you. Yes.
The emotions get attached to energy blocks. It's very...
Say it again.
I was just wondering about emotions and when they get attached to energy blocks. Like
energy blocks.
Yeah, there is certain emotions that I can feel in certain parts of my body.
No, I'll explain that from this perspective. This is very much similar. You see, Buddha came out of the Indian tradition, as we know well, and so yoga came out of Indian tradition. We know that too. So the Vajrayana system in Buddhism, which is very much to do with the subtler physical and mental energies. So from the Vajrayana perspective, which is very similar to the Hindu one, we've got the grosser body, which is this bag of bones, and then we've got subtle body, which is the 72,000 subtle channels, a subtle nervous system. Your Tibetan doctor will have this one. The acupuncturists have this similar system. You've got the subtle nervous system, all these 72,000 subtle channels through which are coursing all these different wind energies, prana. Do you understand? The wind energies, and the wind energies are connected inextricably to all the different states of mind. So when you're angry, it's like a storm, literally, because the wind energies have gone berserk. So when you've got attachment, the wind energies go berserk. So when you've got the wind and the mind together, by working on the mind, you can calm the winds down, but also you've got practices where you can calm the winds down, which will calm your mind down. So your Tibetan doctor will feel the pulses, and she'll feel she knows the cause of your anxiety is intense attachment, because the wind energies related to your attachment have gone berserk. So that's the physical, literally energetic. Of course it is, literally that. Of course it is, darling. But by working on your mind, you can calm those energies down. That's the most powerful way to do it. Do you understand? Because the mind and those winds are inextricably linked. That's how we feel things in our body. But our tragedy is we wait till we feel them at the grossest level before we notice them. What will I do when I'm about to kill my boyfriend? Well, it's a bit late. Do you understand? It's better to be able to see the mind first and see the anger growing, before you get to the point where it's exploding. That's the real skill we have to learn. Do you understand? But of course, yes, absolutely, energetic level. Of course, totally, body and mind are inextricably linked. Makes sense, right? What else, people?
How do you calm the winds?
What, sweetheart?
If you have a disorder of the winds, how do you calm?
Go to a Tibetan doctor. I mean, quite literally. Tibetan doctors are brilliant. They have these herbal medicines that work on the winds, you know. That takes a lot, slow, but I mean, I know so many people. One person took 20 years. He was old. He took 20 years of taking herbs that finally cured his what do you call osteoarthritic something or other. And there's, I mean, a person I know who's got kind of out of control berserk anxiety attacks. She's been on medicine for months. Mind is calming down because the winds are calming down. It's like acupuncture, very similar to the Chinese system, but the Tibetan one is utterly related to the mind, you know, utterly related to all the different delusions, because each of the delusions, as well as the virtues, are linked to these different winds. So the Tibetan medical one is so precise, you know, it's very fascinating. Get a good Tibetan, and there are more and more Tibetan doctors these days. And also for the really fundamental kind of energetic diseases, like imbalance of the wind, of the energies, you know, they're really excellent for that kind of thing. I mean, they mightn't fix your broken leg, but, you know, they can do the other ones, definitely. Yeah, people. What time is it? I've got to do a thing tonight. I've got time. We're still okay. 8:30. That's right. I've got to read something on Zoom after this, but I'm fine. What else, people? Questions? Nothing? Any questions anyway?
I have a question.
Yes, talk to me. Sweetheart, you go.
So sometimes my life looks and feels like a garbage fire burning out of control.
Oh, sweetheart. Are you sure?
So when we have those moments, intense negative emotions.
That's right.
Can you describe in precise detail how we use Buddhist tools?
Sweetheart, I hear you. I like the way your mind works. Precise details. Good. Sweetheart, I think the way to say it, I'm not trying to make you too depressed. It's a bit like you're asking me that you're telling me that you're going 120 miles an hour on the freeway and your wheels are about to fall off. And you ask me for precise details of what to do. Honey child, it all depends on how much you know about mechanics and how much driving you've done is the answer. Because the very fact that we don't notice the wheels are falling off until 120 miles an hour already shows a big problem. We should have started paying attention when the wheels were wobbling. And this is a really good analogy. And as our tragedy in our culture, we don't even know what's going on in our mind until the wheels are falling off. So the best you can do, at least at that point, is damage control and don't kill the person. And I'm not being sarcastic, but the learning from it is to go back to basics and get a practice. Slowly, slowly, by knowing that you can learn to see your mind before it becomes emotion. That's the point. And then you can catch it. So, you know, like, I don't know if you live with a person, let's say pretend you live with a person and they're slurping their tea at breakfast and the anger's been building up and then you want to kill them. But as you start to look at your mind, you have a morning practice and you're noticing your thoughts and you're at the kitchen sink, you notice the annoyance. We don't pay attention to annoyance. We don't pay attention to frustration. We just think it's a normal thing. But frustration and annoyance are anger. They're mild anger. So when you catch them when they're smaller and you argue, give it a break, sweetheart. It's okay. They're allowed to slurp their tea. They're human beings. Or you work with your mind. You calm yourself down. You give yourself a little talk. You can't do that when you're screaming. It's too late. That's the skill we have to learn. Most practical, to catch the endless stories that are there no matter what. They're all running constantly, but we don't pay attention until they're screaming. And that's the skill we have to learn. Does that make sense?
It does, and I do practice.
And you navigate. You'd have to, all you can do is, because sometimes things happen, storms come. You've got to do, the more you've learned to drive, the better you're equipped when the wheels fall off. So I'm not trying to be sarcastic or silly, but that's really all it is. The best you can do is based on what you've done already and what you've known. You do your best and allow the storm to come and try and keep your wits about you and try not to get too crazy when things are really stormy. That's all we can do. I mean, I can only imagine what it's like if you're in Turkey, you know, you're in a house one minute and then you're in a hole in the ground the next, or a war zone comes along. You're forced to find resources in yourself, you know, when things go wrong, and we can't guarantee things won't go wrong. But any practice we have done is what we bring to bear during those times. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does. Then can you speak in precise detail when
So give me a kind of example without giving your own private life away. Tell us an example.
We'll use your tea slurping.
Okay.
As an example. So
as a person doing things that make you crazy,
right,
basically.
you're noticing the annoyance build.
Yes.
In precise detail.
What you do. Okay, so you have to, good, you have to hear what it's saying. So what is annoyance saying? Put it in words, because it's all words, it's thoughts are there. There are thoughts there. The trouble is when it's screaming and yelling, and I seem to scream and yell all the time, but I can still put thoughts to it. But when anger is really full on, if you wrote down every word you said when you were raging, there's a bunch of thoughts written on a piece of paper, properly punctuated with ... and exclamation marks. It's thoughts. You agree it's thoughts, don't you? But we get confused and we think it's emotion. Of course it's emotion, but it's driven by thoughts. So you've got to hear the thoughts. So what is annoyance saying?
This is a bad person.
That's right. And then making me crazy. Why can't they stop drinking their tea this way? Don't they realize it makes me unhappy? Is it not like that? Then you have to argue with that. What's irrational about that? What we've got to hear is all the emotions, the neurotic emotions, exaggerate. Our mummies would tell us that we make mountains out of molehills. Now, you could put it this way. Let's say there's another person who is hearing the same slurping, but isn't getting frustrated. So that person is going, oh, they're slurping. That's okay. Let them slurp. So they're not making a fuss about it. But the person who's getting annoyed and angry, and we all have people in our lives like this, we're making a big fuss about it. So we have to hear the concepts. And if you want to be peaceful and don't want to kill the person and don't want it to grow, you argue with it. You be your best friend. You got your virtuous thoughts, but they're all, I mean, I think of it, all our thoughts are like our roommates. The roommates that tend to run the bloody house are the loud ones, the busy ones, the crazy ones, the angry ones, the neurotic ones, the jealous ones, the self-pity ones. They're big shouting, yelling thoughts. They're the roommates that run the show. And the good roommates like patience and kindness and reasonableness and forgiveness and compassion and patience, they're under the bed or in the closet. So you've got to bring them out and talk to the crazies. It's a good analogy. That's what fucking practice is, baby. It's nothing cosmic like he's talking. Tyler with his weird wacko stuff, cosmic this, that, shine, blah, non-duality, bloody hell. Are we communicating? You've got to hear the thoughts, darling. And if you want, but we've got to catch them and want to catch them because you're sick of this suffering and you don't want it to build up. But the tragedy is these neurotic thoughts totally believe the other person's the problem. So it takes enormous humility to catch and realize it's your thoughts that are playing a big role here.
Final question. So what practices do you recommend to observe your thoughts so precisely in those moments?
You start by doing a little meditation every day. Start with that. 5 minutes and you watch your boring old breath.
What type of meditation?
You sit down, I just said, you sit down and you make a decision. I'm going to do 5 minutes. And I'm going to pay attention to something for 5 minutes. That's all that is. That the beginning practice that Buddha gave is the object. You've got to harness your mind on something. He says we can control the mind. You've got to start somewhere. So you start with 5 minutes and you decide you're going to focus on something. You can focus on the sheep in your mind. You can focus on a candle. It doesn't matter. Anything you like. But the thing he taught that's helpful is the breath, because it happens naturally. So you make a decision. You sit comfortably, you have your back straight, you sit down, you close your eyes so you don't get distracted, and you decide for 5 minutes, I'm going to pay attention to my breath. Now, naturally, 99% of that 5 minutes will be not paying attention to the breath because the mind goes off. So you've got to catch the mind. You've got to train yourself to catch the mind to bring it back to the breath. It wanders off again. You bring it back to the breath. It wanders off again. You bring it back to the breath. It's like you're learning to ride a bike. You climb, when you're a little boy, you climb on the left side and you fall off on the right side, isn't it? Within a second. Well, you've got to get up again and get back on the bike. And before you know it, you get 2 wheels turning, and then maybe 3, and maybe 4. You've got to persevere. It's as practical as that, but it's the most intensely difficult job because we don't want to concentrate on the boring old breath. We're addicted to uncontrolled thoughts and then believing the thoughts when they become emotional. So it's a pretty intense job, but you start somewhere, darling, with humility and patience, knowing it's possible to become familiar with your mind ever more deeply and to learn to be the boss of your mind. Are we communicating? You've got to have patience and humility and hard work. And then the other job, the other part of this is too, your good roommates are there. You have got kindness and virtue and wisdom and compassion and generosity and forgiveness and patience. You have those qualities, right? Well, then you have to activate them as well as calming the other ones down. You've got to activate those thoughts, have positive thoughts. It sounds the corniest thing you've ever heard, but proactively have positive thoughts. So you're seeing a drama and a storm, but it's not the whole story. There are good things happening in there. So you praise yourself for making effort. You praise yourself for working hard. You see good qualities in yourself. I can't stress this one enough because we are addicted to only seeing the problems. Do you understand?
We're communicating, yes.
Good, I'm very happy.
Robina,
Yes.
I struggle a lot with persevering.
I beg your pardon?
I struggle a lot with persevering.
Most people do. Most people do. We give up.
I'm here, I'm listening to you, I know I'm gonna go now.
That's
every
right.
day,
That's
really
right.
excited.
That's it. We give up, darling. It's the commonest thing in the world, darling. It's the commonest thing in the world. It is the most common thing in the world to not persevere, to give up. So we have to just, there's no trick. You start small. And you start with reasonable, small, like I said, 5 minutes, and you just make a decision to be disciplined. We all know you can't be successful if you're not disciplined at anything. And I mean, this is how we all are, we give, and we have to understand, though, what it is that makes us give up. I think when we understand, they talk about enthusiasm and joyful effort, and all sounds very dramatic when they talk in the Bodhisattva path, that the key quality that we do need is perseverance. And we all know that in ordinary world, you'll never be successful at anything if you don't persevere. So let's look at the logic of why we don't persevere, what's going on in there. And the reason is attachment. So attachment at the most primordial level is to our comfort zone. So if you have to make effort to do anything, even you go to the gym and you have to make effort, when you do whatever the machine is, you've got to make effort. So we all know that you start on the machine, and the moment you start to puff, the moment the muscles hurt, you don't want to go further because you have to make effort. So you have to analyze, why don't you make effort? Because attachment wants to be comfortable. Attachment, one way of putting attachment is craving to be in our comfort zone, emotionally, physically, in every way, craving to be in our comfort zone. So when we know the benefit, I'm just talking the gym as an example, if you know the benefit, you will persevere and you'll puff and pant and go further. And you know you won't get anywhere if you don't go further. You've got to go beyond that moment when it starts to hurt. But the only reason that you'll persevere is when you know the benefits. So this really takes time. You've got to know logically the benefits of why you want to work on your mind, the benefits of a practice. You're the beneficiary, and you have to tell yourself what the benefit is. And every time you remind yourself of the benefit, you will persevere. But you've got to go incrementally. And then you rejoice with your effort. You delight in your effort. Don't keep beating yourself up. Oh, I'm only in grade 1. Then you get to grade 2. I'm only in grade 2. Then you get to grade 947. I'm only in grade 947. You've got to be delighted you got to grade 1. Then delighted you get to grade 2. And I mean, finding positive things. This seems so corny, but I can't tell you how profound it is. Because the irony of ego is we are addicted to negativity. So we've got to say the positive things to ourselves, about ourselves, rejoice in our effort, and kind of be our own pep talk, give ourselves a pep talk. I really mean it. And then when you do collapse and fall down, you pick us up again without wanting to kill yourself with guilt. And you just keep going. You just keep going. You just keep going. And you rejoice in your progress. That's it, honey child. Do you understand me, darling? We've got to become our own friend, not our own enemy. My mother used to say, you're your own worst enemy. And it's so true. You've got to see good things, got to find good things, and got to be very realistic with ourselves too. And not, when we see fault, not to exaggerate the fault. We've got to see our own faults, but not to exaggerate them. And you've got to see your good qualities, darling. We want other people to see them, but even when they see them, we don't believe them. So we have to say them ourselves and just go one step at a time, one step at a time. All these sayings we learn, Rome wasn't built in a day. We know all these things. Tibetans have a lovely way of saying, we say, practice makes perfect. They have a much humbler way of putting it. They say, nothing ever gets more difficult with practice. That's very sweet. I like that. It's more humble, isn't it? Nothing ever gets more difficult with practice. So you've got to notice the practice and notice that even if it's 5 minutes and if you're on your meditate, what's your name again, darling? You? Carl. If you see, you do your 5 minutes and you see that 90% of that 5 minutes you're wandering off the breath, you delight that you're able to stay on it for 10 minutes, except for 10%, Do you understand? You have to just delight in your effort. We've got to delight in our effort. Delight in your effort. And the fact is, you know, this meditation is called, you know, it's called in Tibetan Shine or Shamatha in Sanskrit, and it's referring to the end result when you've got this subtle level of mind. Forget that one. I mean, to get that one, you've got to give up sex, drugs, and rock and roll and go to the mountains for several years. But the fact of even attempting for 5 boring old minutes just to focus on your breath, it means you're consciously deciding for 5 minutes not to follow every thought. That's pretty powerful. But the benefit of it is you won't get much concentration, but the benefit is because you're sitting there watching your breath, you're consciously focusing on the breath. You can't help but notice all the crazy thoughts. And they say one of the signs of success of learning to meditate is you think you're getting worse. You're not getting worse because you've got to want to pay attention to the thoughts. One of the misconceptions about concentration and meditation is you want all the thoughts to go away. Eventually they will when you're really advanced. The grosser level, you've got control. But the beginning level, your thoughts are berserk, and they've always been berserk. We just haven't paid attention. But now because you're paying attention to your breath, you can't help but hear the thoughts out of the corner of your eye. Well, that's good, because now you begin to see what's going on. And then when you're at the sink and the person's slurping their tea, instead of just being involved in the drama and the anger and blurting out your words, you're catching the thoughts and you shut. Carl, give it a break, mate. It's okay. You start to hear and you can start to be your own therapist. Become more and more familiar with your thoughts and become better and better and better at arguing with them, patting yourself on the back sometimes, telling yourself to shut up another time. Just learning to be, it's nothing cosmic, learning to be your own friend and know your thoughts well before they become emotional. And that takes effort because you've got to really want to realize slurping the tea is one thing, your mind is another. Do you understand? Okay, you people, what else? 10 to 9. I've got to go soon. That'll do for tonight, I think. That'll do, I think. Keep up, people have to persevere. And we admire people who have enthusiasm, don't we? We admire people who persevere. Well, then take courage. We can do it too. Just don't give up, one step at a time, one baby step at a time, and delight in each step. Not, oh, I'm only in grade 1. That's our big problem. That's the irony of it. We're never satisfied. You've got to learn to be satisfied with what we've achieved, which we think is often complacency. It's not. I'm delighted I've only done this amount, and now I can go to the next level. So you bring yourself forward, and then you delight in your progress, and you've got to state your progress, admire your effort. You have to do this. But the irony of ego is that we're never satisfied. This is the tragedy of attachment. It's never satisfied. So you've got to argue with attachment and learn to be satisfied. We can do it. It's possible. So to like this little bit of information, if we have this discussion we've had, if there's anything useful, food for thought, techniques we can take home, take them home, put them into practice. Have confidence that our mind, our thoughts are not set in stone. We can grow our mind. We have this marvelous potential not to give up. Changchub Central Rinpoche Ma Ke Panam Ke Guchi Ke Panyampa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Phaba Shog. May compassion grow and grow in the hearts of all, and wisdom. Okay, people on Zoom. Goodbye. Thank you, everybody. Don't give up.
Thank you, Venerable.
Keep moving, Jimmy. Don't you give up, mate. Oh, Jimmy's gone. There you go, darling.
No, I'm here. Thank you.
Oh, yeah,
so
good
much.
on you. Don't give up, honey.
Never, never.
Good. Well done. See, he's praising himself for his effort.
Praising you.
Oh, good. All right. See you, darlings. I'm going to turn the machine off now.